because that was a challenge I had as a young Christian, pursuing God and not being too carried away with the assignment, because there were times where I was so carried away with the assignment that I will spend weeks and not knowing that, I've actually not had time with God. Like, I was more interested in the assignment than having a personal relationship with God. But over time, when I began to struggle, I was like, why am I struggling? And I realized that I wasn't connected to the source, who was the one who has assigned me for that assignment. And that's one thing in this generation. A lot of people get carried away with the activity, then they forget the place of personal relationship with God. And over time, if you're not quick to come to realization, you now find out that the story of Ichabod, where they say the glory has departed, you will not even know that the glory has departed, because you're still even driven in that activity. And over time, you now find out like God is no longer there.
Sometimes we don't realize that the gift is the gift. God's always, the gift is for us. And just because we're operating in it and it's at its best, it doesn't mean that the glory hasn't departed from us, because God is still willing to use us in that moment. But we have to be willing to step back and to open our eyes to.
Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of Rise and Thrive. If you're watching us for the first time, Rise and Thrive is a faith-based platform that is aimed at empowering young individuals to all of their fullness in Christ. And on this podcast, we have individuals who come to have authentic conversations around faith, career, spirituality, finance, marital life, and also go into topics that are really not talked about in the society. And so on each episode, we aim at bringing authentic individuals to come have these conversations. So if you find this episode interesting, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. On today's episode, I have someone who I consider a very, very important vessel of God, someone whose ministry has really impacted my life in the gospel music that he sings and how much he has been able to live in this present day as a new generation Christian. I have no other person than Jericho.
Wow. I really appreciate it, the kind words. So I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. And I'm really glad. I should be the one saying I'm really glad to have you on the podcast today, because he's a very busy person, and being able to have him come on this show today, it took a lot. We've been going back and forth for, I think, since December, November, yeah. Because getting to Gary on a schedule was really difficult, but I really love the fact that you put in so much effort to wanting to kind of like shift things around to make sure that you made yourself available. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Now we're here.
So Jericho, to tell me, because I see that you are into ministry of singing gospel music.
Yes.
So what was the journey like for you? How did you come about that?
Yes. So I haven't always been a singer. So I think singing, it started back when I first entered into college. So that's when I started. That was back in 2013. And I went to a Christian college out in Terrell, Texas, so not too far from here. But that's where I started singing, because they had this opportunity where they said, okay, if you decide to travel with us during like spring break, you can extend your spring break by a week. So I think at first it was more of a, I don't want to say like a fleshly motive, but it was. But I think during that time, just during, God developing my voice in that moment where I was singing in a choir for those like 2 years, God was like planting a seed into me to become more of a worshiper. So that's where it all began.
Wow. So were you born again prior to actually joining the singing ministry? Or you were just a nominal Christian who got born again on that part?
I was I would say I feel like I wasn't really saved or really like born again until maybe 2 years after that. But I've always been around the church because my family, you know, they've always gone to church. But I found out later, you know, in life that, okay, you know, you have to know God for yourself. I was, you know, the first moment where I was really impacted, I believe it was back in 2007. And, you know, I was at a church retreat in a camp. It was down in like Brownwood, Texas. I'm not too sure if you know where that's like deep down in down in South Texas. But I was there, and I think that was the moment where I first really encountered God, like for myself. You know, apart from all of my family just saying, you know, you have to go to church. And then, you know, in that moment, I think, you know, God, he planted a seed in me to, you know, really try and pursue him. And then from that moment, because I didn't know in that moment what had happened. But after leaving from that retreat, it really felt like, you know, I was trying to pursue something and I didn't know what it was. Because of that moment that I had with God at the retreat, you know, and eventually I didn't really encounter God again until really encounter him and really feel like I was getting to know him until about 2017. So that was from about 2007 to 2017.
Wow.
So, and then that's when I really started to really dive in, and I feel like it's been like an expedited speed that God has been putting me on since then. So.
That's interesting. And so, talking about your 2010 to 2007 to 2017, where were the factors that actually drove your spiritual journey into actually finding God? Because I know you were involved in a lot of spiritual activities, right, during those period. But what was that defining moment for you when you said, okay, you know what, I can't continue to walk in all these superficialness. I really wanted to have that encounter with God.
Yeah, so it was actually in 2017, because in 2017, I think that was like something, my brother, he committed suicide. So in 2017, that it wasn't at that moment, but it was throughout 2017. So it was from the brokenness from all of that. And like, even in like from being broken, I was crying out to God so hard in 2017, just for him to be with me. Nothing more than that. And then so throughout that entire year, just crying out to God. And then around like November of 2017, that's when I really don't know how to explain it, but that's when something like really changed. And then, you know, a fire was just lit in me, and ever since then, ever since November of 2017, I really haven't been the same. And God has just been taking me to, you know, deeper levels in him.
Wow. And seeing that you're into gospel music, how has it been for you, like as a Christian and a minister? We have a lot of people that sing,
yes,
but they don't minister, because it's two different things to be a singer and being a minister that ministers unto God. So what has it been for you on a journey to being a gospel minister?
So that all stems from like that 2017 crying out, because during that time, that's where I took a hold of, you know, what I learned back in 2013 to 2015 when I was in the choir. So I took a hold of like everything I learned there as far as like just from singing, and that became like my prayer moments in the year of 2017. And so that's pretty much how I would just, I don't want to say I was praying like just like that, because of course I was, you know, doing other things, you know, prayer. But my prayers were stemmed through me just worshiping God and like through melodies. And so that's why like if you ever see me sing, I don't really stay on script with things. It's more of just like a prayer language that, you know, that I'm going for.
Oh, that's really nice. And then how has it been for you being a modern day Christian, having to navigate the challenges of being a new day Christian and living in this world where there are a lot of social activity and social media drama? How has it been like for you?
I think the most important thing that it has been for me is just to remember the place, and to remember just to seek God, because there's all of these distractions that we may have that where people are wanting to pull you into different directions, especially with being in gospel. People they want to tell you exactly where you should go because they see the gift, and they believe that you should be more ambitious. And it's not that ambition will always lead you away from God, but it's not that ambition will always lead you away from God, but it's just that my main focus is just really seeking God. And because I've had so many friends, and even in gospel, I don't even know how, but I've had a lot of friends in this gospel ministry, and I've seen just from their ambition and how they kind of strayed. And it's not more so of a fear, but it's just realizing, what we are in this life for, and it's just solely to seek God.
That's really true. And being in gospel and having to deal with a lot of people and being on the stage too, yes. How do you manage the place of self, and actually genuinely serving God? Because there are sometimes when you are on the spotlight, you don't even know when you leave the place of serving God, and then self begins to take over. Like you want that spotlight on you, you want to show, it's no longer to the glory of God anymore. Sometimes people tend to want to input self in their service to God. How do you manage having to separate self and actually genuinely offering ministrations to God that genuinely is from a place of ministration, not self wanting to be glorified?
For me, it's taking time away from the ministry, because sometimes we just want to continue to press in, and want to continue to build upon what we have. But I think it's most important to take time away. It's kind of like the reason why we weren't able to originally get everything going in November, is because during this time, I was in my time of prayer. I believe God, He was speaking to me just that I needed to take a 6-month period away from just really ministering to people and just carrying on in the ministering to Him. So that's the most important thing, is just taking that time away to be able to recalibrate and to ground yourself, and to remember and to focus your mind on where God is truly, what He truly desires out of us, rather than just continuing on in a path of just trying to grow yourself, trying to grow your brand.
Yeah. I see that you've worked with a lot of gospel bands. So what has the experience been like for you?
The experience it's been good. It's been pretty good. I think the best part about it is just the level of diversity that God has introduced me to. Because growing up, I wasn't in a charismatic church, but then it seems like slowly God has just been introducing me to it. But more than just that, it's God has brought me to be with different cultures, like Nigerian culture, and then Ghanaian culture, and then also maybe I don't want to call it white culture, but American culture. Let's say that. Yeah. And also gospel, Black American culture. So it's just I love how God has just been taking me around, because He hasn't been keeping me in just one sphere, but been allowing me to get to different parts and to develop as a worshiper.
Okay, that's nice. So what would you say are the challenges of being a Christian in this current generation?
I think the most challenging thing is what we see on the media. For me, it's just seeing how focus driven people are, when when you're talking about a calling, because I think, you know, a lot of the times we fall off track because we start to think about the calling more than what we are really called to do. Like, and that's what I always go back to, is just pursuing God. That's like the main thing, because if we haven't pursued God, then we can't really be called, you know. Because we look at, you know, different people in the Bible. We look at like Moses' life before he was, you know, introduced to his calling. He was pursuing God. We look at David before he was introduced. He was pursuing God. And so I think that's the most difficult thing, you know, about everything that's going on in this generation, is just, you know, with people building us up, and there's so much advertisement of you have to do something, you know, rather than just stepping back and having that full pursuit for God.
I think you're really right, because that was a challenge I had as a young Christian, pursuing God and not being too carried away with the assignment. Because there were times where I was so carried away with the assignment that I will spend weeks and not knowing that, oh, I've actually not had time with God. Like, I was more interested in the assignment than having a personal relationship with God. And at a point, it just seemed like God was just silent, like he just stepped back and was just watching me do what I was doing. But over time, when I began to struggle, I was like, why am I struggling? And I realized that I wasn't connected to the source, who was the one who has assigned me for that assignment. And that's one thing in this generation. A lot of people get carried away with the activity, then they forget the place of personal relationship with God. And over time, if you're not quick to come to realization, you now find out that the story of Ichabod, where they say the glory has departed, you will not even know that the glory has departed, because you're still even driven in that activity. And over time, you now find out like God is no longer there.
Yes.
And it's really a bad thing where you get to a place where you are in an assignment and God is no longer there with you.
Oh yes, no, that is true, because a lot of people, sometimes we don't realize that the gift is the gift. You know, the gift is for us, and just because we're operating in it and it's at its best, it doesn't mean that the glory hasn't departed from us, because God is still willing to use us in that moment, but we have to be willing to step back and to open our eyes to what God has truly called us to.
True. That's true. And then also, I see that we have a lot of Christians in this generation. The dynamics of Christianity in this generation has changed. Like what we used to have as traditional Christians, we don't have that. I don't know if to say we don't have that, but the dynamics is changing. What would you say are some of the values that you think Christians should hold on to, even in this ever-changing generation that we are, where we have a lot of digitalization? Now, you don't really necessarily, because I remember back in those days, people had to go to church in person. Now, after COVID, things have changed. You can watch the church service from your home. Do you think all these things are really helped in building a balanced Christian life, or you think there are some of the values that we still need to hold on to, even as we evolutionize as modern day Christians?
I believe there are some values that we do need to hold on to, especially, you know, taking our time to go into the actual building of the church to worship with other people. I think there's still power in the digital worship, but it's not as much power as when you actually go into the building, because when everyone is lifting up their voice, exalting God, you know, as one, there's a different power in that than from you just sitting in your house. Of course, you can still feel it somewhat, but there's definitely a difference there.
That's true. That's true. Then I was going to ask you something very personal. I see that you have tattoos.
Oh yes.
Did you get them before you got born again, or it was after you actually give your life to Christ? Because there's always this thing that people talk about, having tattoos as a Christian, if it is wrong. What are your views about that? And when did you get them?
My views, they've kind of transformed, because I wouldn't say, when I got my first one, that was in 2017, so I was still around that. I was in my transitioning stage. But They all mean something. I think they're just something like this one I have right here is the Lion of Judah. So it's like when I look down, it just reminds me just to continue to press forward and worship, because it has just someone bowing down, someone lifting their hands, playing a guitar, a shofar, and it's just, but so I don't, me personally, of course, because I got tattoos, I'm not going to be one to, to condemn the people with tattoos. But I do think it's important, the meaning of the tattoos that you get, that it's not, idolizing something that God wouldn't have us to look at.
Okay. So how do you think the older generations can better help support the Christians that are coming in this generation?
The older generation, I believe it's more about just mentoring us and building us up. Because there's a lot of people, like I said, like when we're going, like people get so, ambitious with the call. And I believe the older generation, they were more prayer-filled. They weren't so focused on all of these other things. Before you started to see even like famous worship leaders and things like that, the older generation, they were in their prayer closet, and it just happened to be that they ended up getting famous. God happened to open up doors for them. But now it's become more of like a pursuit where people want to be this big pastor. They want to be this big worship leader. And so I think that's something that the older generation, that is so important to listen to them about, is just getting into that place, where they were able to get into that place of prayer, and not imitating them, like Paul says, imitate me, but imitate him as he imitated Christ, and not getting so distracted on just looking solely at the vessel that God used, but understanding who they were looking at. I think does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And also talking about like mentoring, I think this generation are generations that are not really prone to wanting to serve, and it's very important. Most of the people that God used, they had a part in their life where they had to deal with self and then go through the process and become who God actually wanted to be. Take for instance Moses, right?
Yes.
Moses was born in the house of he was born in the house of his family, which were the Levi tribe of Levi, and then he grew up with Egypt's Pharaoh, and he didn't let that become his identity, and God took him through the process of having to leave Egypt to stay with his father-in-law, and then throughout that process, it was a process of pruning, breaking, and also preparing him to becoming who he was going to send back to Pharaoh as a god. He said, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh, because he ran out of Egypt as a fugitive. But when God was sending him back, he was sending him back to Pharaoh as a god. Now it brings me to the point of this generation where a lot of people just want to just spring up and just become on the spotlight without having to go through the process. And in the process is where character is built, and that's one of the things that's really lacking in this generation, having to serve. They just feel like, oh, okay, I could just stand up and become. There's a place of service, there's a place of process where God gets to process you for the assignment, and then there's a place where he now showcases you in that area that he has called you to be. But right now in this generation, I think service is something that is really lacking, and a lot of young people are just springing up without having mentors in their lives who can properly mentor them in that area that God has called them. So one of the things I think I want to dish out as an advice to this generation is to serve in your church, find a community to serve. Just make sure that you are living a life of service, because that's something that is really lacking in this generation. And those are the things, like he said, our forefathers that gone ahead of us in ministry, they were not looking for the spotlight. They just wanted to have a relationship with God. It was at that place of prayer, their place of consecration, their place of service, that God actually found them. Not like they were looking for the spotlight. They were just wanting to serve God wholeheartedly, and then that happened, and then God called them into the place that they are. So I was going to ask that what are the key points that you say young generation Christians should chase after, the key values that they should chase after if they want to operate fully in their calling that God has called them to?
So I would say the number one key value would be to find that place of prayer, which is to find that individual place outside of just going to church. And I love it because now it's becoming more of like kind of a cliche with people saying you have to encounter God outside of church. So I mean, but there's still that still needs to be preached, because there's people that they're not we may not be consistent in it all the time, and I think that's the most important thing in what we should be doing in this generation, is just making sure that we encounter God on a daily basis. We encounter God in all different ways, because some people, they encounter God on their runs, and some people with music, some people just in their prayer closet. So it's just more so about finding that place and how you can encounter God. So I think that would be like the main thing that I would say. And then and the second thing is just to not fully look after pursuing the blessing, but look after pursuing God. Because we see, like, even when Jesus was being tempted by the devil, he was offering him all of these blessings that God had already promised him. But Jesus didn't accept it because he knew that it wasn't time for it. And so that's the main thing that we have to look at, is recognizing when it is time to accept the blessings of God, rather than to walk out of timing. Because you can be ambitious and accept and receive blessings that should have came from God in a wrong time and be led completely astray, and you won't even know it because you're thinking, I got what I wanted. But that's another thing, is just making sure that we pursue God in that place of prayer, pursue God in those moments, so that we're not being led astray by the blessings of the enemy, but are accepting the blessings of God.
True. That's really true. And that leads me to my next question I was going to ask you. And I think the question would be, what are your takes on New Age? Because we have a lot of young people these days who dabble into New Age and Satanism. What's your take on that?
I think that's really a cry for people who are looking for God, but they just don't know it. And especially for me, we're from Colorado. There's a lot of new age stuff out there. So I see it there. Those are like people, they're really just crying out for God. I know that you can't, and sometimes even from what I've seen is that people, they try and mix new age along with Christianity. Because they're not, they haven't been taught right. They haven't been taught that, that's not the way to do it, that God can show you, more of what you desire to find. But yeah, I believe that's more so just a cry, and I think that just makes more of a mission for us to actually, go out and to show everyone that's, operating in these new age things, that there's another place where God can actually reveal the truth of his whole entire creation to you. And yeah,
that's really true. I think, I like what you said, that that's a cry, but just that they are feeding it with the wrong thing. Their soul is actually searching for some truth, searching for some light, but they're searching for it in the wrong direction. I think that also boils down to the point you made of us actually coming out to share the gospel more, so that they can find the real truth that the soul is actually searching for. Now, there's something I've really found, that there are sometimes we have Christian creatives who on the stage live one life, and outside the stage live a different life entirely, that is not even in conformity with what you see them perform on the stage. How do you manage to maintain a consecrated life, both on stage and outside the stage, where there's nobody watching? Like, how do you manage to keep a consecrated life on both ends, that your life, what you appear to show in church, is consistent on what we live on your daily life?
It's just more so about realizing the things that God reveals to us, because I don't think it doesn't happen out of nowhere when someone begins to live a life of an unclean life. It's more so just the seeds that have been planted in them little by little. Maybe there's a relationship that God told them that they did not need to get into, and they just kept pursuing it, But I think it's just little by little, these things they'll get into us. So it's more so just, drawing close to God and understanding when He's saying, okay, there's something right here that you need to deal with. Because I think all people, like all worship leaders, they're gonna deal with something, or pastors, or whoever it may be, they're gonna deal with these things. But it's more so, are we taking control of it and not allowing these things to overtake us when they do come to us. And it's just that. So just being aware of, of the call of God, and pursuing a clean life, and pursuing to be separated from the world, and to not try so hard to fit in, to fit into everything. And I believe that helps me to remain clean.
That's really true. And looking at today, where we have so much social media activities, and the rise of social media is so much, how do you manage to maintain your Christian life and in this social media era, and not letting peer pressure and the influence of social media negatively impact your life?
Yeah, I think it's more so about, I take time away from social media. I used to keep it on my phone, but now I don't. I think what helped me, and it's just something practical, what helped me to not be so invested in social media is like removing the apps. When I go on Instagram, I'm only really going through the browser, like on the actual website. So it's not as satisfying as the app. You're not gonna get stuck there as much. So I think that's something practical that I use, so I don't get so carried away and taken away and distracted by social media.
So then if you decide not to use social media, then how do we spread the gospel?
I do. See, that's the thing, is like I don't keep the app on my phone.
Okay.
I'll delete it, and then every once in a while I'll go through like the browser. I'll go on there, and I'll look through, but I'm not gonna just stay invested in it. And plus, I think TikTok is see, I'm one of those people like TikTok, because you can't go on the browser on TikTok. But
funny thing, I don't know what people like about TikTok, because I hate the interface of TikTok. Like when I look at TikTok, it looks ugly to me.
Yes.
And so I don't know how people even stay long. I can't stay past 1 minute on TikTok because it doesn't look. The interface is kind of like so. But I understand that TikTok is mine is Instagram.
Yeah, that was mine too, but my sister, I have a twin sister, she like really, she pushed me. She said, oh yeah, you should push something out on TikTok. I was like, okay, I don't really use TikTok, but I said, okay, I'll do it. And that's where it started. And then I realized that, I don't know, TikTok is, for some reason, more people, they'll interact with you, and it's not more so about the interaction, but it's just more so about like how you have heard that just something that you spoken or something you saying changed someone's lives, that you didn't even know from like maybe across the country, across the world.
True.
So that's why I like TikTok, is just because
there's a lot of visibility from diverse audience.
Yeah, and how you can impact people across the world. Instead of just like Instagram is kind of just, you can do the ads where you promote and all of that, but if you're just posting off of your own page, it's just your own friends, your own following that's really gonna see it.
Yeah, that's true. That's really, really true. So how do you balance like your social media life and ministry?
As far as like posting on there, or just like posting. For me, posting, I never really even liked to post videos or anything like that. But I think it was just one moment in like a place of prayer where I felt God was really pushing me to post the video that I had saying, and then it was just from people, because I haven't always been in like the gospel part industry, so it's just people from my past, where they see that I've just been crying out to God. And they're wondering, like, what is this that is happening to him? and then people just they become curious. So that's really more so why I started posting videos, is because the amount of curiosity from people from my past that they had. So I said, I'm gonna just keep pushing it out, and they just kept coming. So that's more so why I do it.
So how do you think in this modern day we could use social media as a way to influence the gospel?
I think it's just more so about, I think right now we kind of are, because we have more people that are posting like your podcast. People are posting podcast things, and I think it's more open because people are seeing another side to like the Christian life, especially for like those that may have been hurt and they may have like walked away from the church. They're able to see, okay, it wasn't just that church that I was at, but God has allowed there to be other churches that I could potentially go to, or other ministries that can impact my life. So I think that's something that we are doing, but we can do more of.
Sure. Okay. So are you dating?
No, for me, I'm not dating.
Why?
I feel like for me it's more of a different story. For me, I think sometimes we get so caught up in just thinking that, because culture, it tells us we have to date, and it tells us we need to get married and things like that. But where God has been leading me, I feel like He hasn't led me to that place yet to say, okay, you need to start.
So are you trying to tell me you are like Paul in the Bible?
I would say I don't want to claim that over my life, because I don't have any desire to be married right now, but also I don't want to deny the blessings of God if He has it in store for me in the future. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like Paul, but right now I'm in just kind of a settled state. Just
have you been in a relationship before?
Yeah, I've been in a relationship. It's just, yeah. I don't know, my younger brother, he actually called me, like, I just told my younger brother this the other day that I wasn't looking for anyone, and he was telling me I'm getting old. he kind of like, yeah, he's...
So how many years have you been out of a relationship?
I want to say, probably like, what year is it? Probably about 5 years. Well, I guess I was kind of talking to someone like 2 years ago, but I wouldn't say it was like a relationship, but I've been out for maybe about 5 years. Oh, no, probably longer than that. It was like 2 years after college.
Wow.
Which was like 2015.
That's interesting. Wow. So you don't feel pressured at all to...
No, I don't feel pressured. At first I did, but I feel like God's removed that burden from me, from feeling pressured and all of that.
So was it something you talked to God about to take away that pressure from you?
Yeah, because I think before I feel like I was pursuing it, but now I think before I was pursuing it for all the wrong reasons, because I think sometimes we get caught up with Paul says if you can't control yourself, then get married. So I think that's more so the reason why I was pursuing it, rather than just asking God to help me be able to control myself. And so I think once God started to help me, be able to get into that place of, control over my thoughts and all of that, then that's when I was alleviated of like that desire to even want to be married right now. I don't want to say for the future, but right now I'm getting old, so it may come soon.
So how do you maintain sexual purity in this journey?
For me, it's really just controlling my eyes and my thoughts, and like we spoke about, control, making sure you're aware of what you're watching. And also you said like what you're listening to. So I think back then, like when I was maybe early in college, that played a big role. I mean, what I was listening to. A lot of the songs, they're not leading you to Christ. They're leading you somewhere else. So that played a huge part in it. And but yeah, that's separating myself from like different music and separating myself from just lusting and being more aware of actually what I'm allowing my eyes to look upon. That's helped me gain purity, especially, you know, like a gym culture. I go to the gym a lot, you know, a lot of things in the gym, you know, it's not for, you know what I'm saying. but yeah, I think that's the main thing for me right now. I think that's just controlling my eyes, especially in the gym. You know, it's gonna happen.
You see something, I cover my eyes with the blood of Jesus.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah, that's
wow.
I have to. I mean, I think you have moments like where you unknowingly may like gaze at different things, but it's about like control, like taking control. You know, just taking control and not allowing that to plant seed in you. Because I think that's the biggest thing about us is that if we start looking at things and we allow that thing to start planting and growing in us without actually addressing it, then that's what really causes us to fall.
True. That's really, really true. And being a worshiper is very important that you maintain a high level of purity.
Oh yes.
Because that's ministration.
Yeah, and I think that is important, especially because I think one thing that changed me is I heard Benny Hinn, he said like it takes years for you to get close to God, but just one mess up, it can ruin, you know, all of that progress that you've had. You know, so for me it's just more so the desire not wanting to grieve the Spirit.
Jesus.
So that's just more so that's what really keeps me continuing in the level of purity. You know, even like in the times where my eyes, like, they may not be in the right place or my mind may not be in the right place, it's just focusing back on saying like, Lord, you know, there's more in this life than this. Not being so invested in, you know, the physical things, but allowing God to really take you to another place to see the benefit in Him rather than, you know, what we can see.
So I wanted us to talk about a conversation, sexual purity, right? That's never truly talked about. When you talk about sexual immorality, some people say, "Oh, it's okay not to have sex," but they engage in other sexual vices. What's your take on sexual purity and the word sexual immorality? And where do you think these addictions stem from? How do you think people get initiated into these things?
So for me, I think it's important to stay away from like all things that are sexual. When the Bible says like sexually immoral, it's not just talking about the actual like sexual activity with someone, but it's talking about, you know, like just like masturbation or looking at pornography and things of that sort. But I found that out at like an early age, especially because when I was 5 years old, one of my brother's oldest friends, he like introduced me to pornography. So at a young age, that being planted in you, it makes it very difficult to even be uprooted, because it's something that's when you're in your learning stages. And so that stuck with me until I was like in about like the 7th or 8th grade. And yeah, it was I don't think I ever seen anything wrong with it at that time. But you know, when I got into the 7th or 8th grade, and you know, when I think about it, when I say it, it stems back to that encounter when I had in 7th grade. So I believe that was actually around the time when I removed myself from all of that. But I think there were still some lasting effects. Like that caused me to like later in life to become like curious and things like that. So yeah, but I think it's more so just about abstaining from every level of sexual impurity, not just sexual activity with someone else.
And then talking about addictions, right? We have a lot of young people these days who are into drugs, who are into alcohol. Did you have experience with such things? growing up as a young person, and how did you come out of such challenges if you ever had one?
I wouldn't say that I've ever had like maybe like an addiction, but when I was growing up, because like I'm from Colorado, so like in Colorado marijuana is like really big there, and so when I was growing up in high school, well, not even in high school, in middle school, at the age of probably I want to say like 10, I was introduced to marijuana. So that was like my first encounter there, and it kind of took me all the way until maybe around like my junior year in high school, 11th grade, until like I was able to get off of that. And I can't really pinpoint to say how I got off of it, but I know it was just, maybe it was the seed that was planted in my life when I had that encounter at 12 years old. So that was like 2 years after I had experienced like smoking. So at 12 years old, I had that encounter. And then when I was in the 11th grade, that's when I was like, oh, why am I even doing this? So, but yeah, I don't think that answers the question though. Did that?
No, you did.
Okay.
So you're lucky. You've never really had addiction issues.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Because I see that rising in this young generation. You have a lot of people involved in alcoholism.
Oh yeah.
And drug abuse, and it's really a thing of concern for me how we can help young people see beyond the addictions challenges that they have, because some of them stem from peer pressure and some of them stem from the place of having a void, and those voids are voids that only God can actually heal.
Yes.
And so that's why I have this platform to openly talk about issues like that, and have people who have actually gone through such challenges share their story to encourage others, to make them understand that, see, this is possible. I'm not coming to preach to you from a place of logic. I'm actually having people who have gone through this challenge share their experience, and this is a living example that if God could do it for this person, God can also do it for you if you are willing to yield yourself to God actually helping you from this addiction. And that's something that's really of a huge concern for me, for this generation. They deal with so much peer pressure, addiction, and trauma. Have you had any challenge with trauma? Like, I think you shared stuff about losing your brother and how that really affected you. I'm really glad that was really something that spurred you, because some people go through that challenge and then it gets them derailed for life. They just begin to find themselves doing stuff because of that moment of grief that they've experienced. But I'm really glad that that's actually served as a navigation to actually helping you find God for yourself.
Oh yes. No, and I think that was the main trauma for me that occurred. I mean, there were other things, but I would say that was definitely a pinpoint in my life where I needed to change. But like I said, when that trauma happened, it wasn't, I wasn't clean from there. It wasn't like I was living like a clean, pure life.
Yeah.
But it kind of broke me to the place where I kind of, I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. But yeah, I mean, eventually God, he brought me back into it. And I think that's the thing, like you were saying, like addiction. That was the main thing that actually caused my brother to spiral down like that. It's just addiction. And that's what, caused me to open my eyes to see, that's a concern, like more so like you see that it's a concern that this generation, there's a lot of people struggling with it. And, some people in the generation, they kind of even normalize some of these things. And that's why, I try to do what I can do to show them that there's another place, there's another thing that God can show you, that's better than any addiction that you can ever experience. Because most of the people that are addicted, they're just trying to find that escape, and that's kind of how my brother was. He was just trying to find an escape until that point. So yeah, I think that's why I do what I do. Showing them God, it can be an escape.
Yeah, that's true. So for someone who is an upcoming gospel artist, what are the brands you've worked with? let's start with them. What are the bands you sang with?
So I've done like background vocals. So I've sang with there's this group called Hilltop, so I've sang with them. I've sang backup for Kiera Sheard before. I sang backup for Vashawn Mitchell. I sang backup for one of my friends. I don't know if you know him. His name's Dwayne. Yeah, but he was on. What was he on? He was on like Sunday's Best and all that stuff. But yeah, I sang. He actually was like the one that introduced me to the majority of that. But yeah, I sang background for some people, and then I mean, it's just really been a blessing, because honestly, for me, I really never see myself as being able to sing background vocals, because when I started out, I didn't even sing tenor, which is like, that's like the regular men vocal. I was singing bass, so I really didn't have like any tone, but God made a way and introduced me to all that.
Oh wow, that's nice. So what would you say are some of the advice you're gonna give to someone who is a gospel artist and looking to grow in the place of worship?
I would say, before you could grow in the place of worship, you have to grow in that place of prayer. You have to grow in that place of intimacy, because I think we do so well and try to school people up and showing them all these how-tos and things like that. But it doesn't really come like that. We can, like, as people, we can only show someone so much. As like a worshiper, we can show them how to sing and things like that. But the true voice that really attaches, to someone, and that really helps someone to be delivered and helps someone to draw close to God, that true voice, it can only come from that place of intimacy. So that would be my that would be my suggestion, is just to go into that place of intimacy, and then everything else, I believe God, he'll allow you to develop that burning desire to grow your vocal ability, grow your musicianship and whatever you're doing there. But it all starts in that place of prayer, because without that, it doesn't really matter what you do. You don't want to be another voice out there.
So how has the church community played an important role in your life as a believer?
I think the church community, it played... One thing that was important, I think, is... Well, actually, can you expand on the question, just so I can maybe get more in depth?
So being in the community of Christians, the Christian community, has it really impacted your life and your faith and also your walk with God? Because sometimes people believe that, you don't necessarily need to belong to a church community. You can just watch from home. And so yes, how does actively being in a church community, has it really impacted your Christian walk?
So I think it really showed me different levels of spiritual maturity that we can have, and it helped me to grow, that burning desire to just want more. I think that's why I would say it's important to find that community, to find those people, because at one point in time I haven't always been around like a large community of people. I used to, because you may know, I don't know if you know or not, but I'm like really quiet.
You are. You are.
But yeah, so it was hard for me to get into it, but but people, God sends people my way to just break me out of that quiet mold. And so that's how the church community has impacted me, is just being able to open up more, and being able to just see that there's more in Christ that we can have.
Have you had church hurts before?
Yes, I have.
Do you want to share your experience and how you healed from it?
Yes, I can share it. So, remember when I talked about like my place of prayer? It started when I was the first ministry I've ever sang with. God, I feel like it was really God. He was speaking to me. He was saying like, you really need to, step away, because you're getting too not too full of yourself, but too full of yourself. And so I had stepped away, and I was telling, I was trying to tell like my leadership that I needed to step away, and it was just more so that like they weren't really understanding of it. And then my pastor, he even began to like preach different words like while we were in the congregation, saying like, you know, pretty much just like kind of scolding. Yeah, like I'm the only one that had to step away.
Wow.
But yeah, pretty much preaching my situation. I mean, everyone, they knew who it was, like, and so that's where the hurt has stemmed from. And I think, I mean, eventually I did end up leaving there. I didn't leave there in spite, but I left there and I let them know, you know, why I was leaving. But I believe like through time, God eventually he healed me from that, because I really didn't hold any like grudge against them. I mean, they even like welcomed me back, like sometimes, but I never really held a grudge against them. So.
Oh wow, that's really nice, because there's some church hurts that you experience that you're like, I'm not going back there again.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you have any life-changing experience you've had in your life, and can you share how God has really come through for you?
As in like in ministry or
not necessarily in ministry, just your life generally.
I would say that, I mean, every day is a life-changing moment for me. I haven't really had anything like that's been, well, I don't want to downplay anything. It's just more so like the people that God introduces me to. I think it was more so maybe just like a small, well, actually, my apologies, let me back up. So a life-changing moment for me was just being, it was actually that church that I was in. It was just being introduced to like my music director there. And that church, I mean, that's why I never really downplay that even any moment there, because that's where I started. I never even planned on being like even doing gospel or anything like that until I was there, because they had seen like something in me and they were like, okay, can you help me, you know, do this song? And I've always been like a writer. So after I had ended up helping them record a song, I found out that my music director, he was actually a producer. But yeah, I found out he was a producer and he does all this stuff. So, and I've always written songs. So I was like, oh yeah, there's this song that I want to record that actually stemmed from that moment, like when my brother passed and being broken and all in that season. So I was like, oh yeah, I really want to record this song. And so I think that was like maybe probably the most life-changing thing that happened to me, is just being in that church to encounter my music director, you know, just to be introduced to my music director. Because if I wasn't, then I probably wouldn't have been anywhere within like writing gospel music or anything like that.
True. So how has it been like being a gospel music artist?
For me, I feel like I'm on the slower side, because I feel like there's been a lot of opportunities, but for me, I think I've turned a lot of opportunities down just so that I can remain like in that place of closeness with God. Because, you know, yeah, I think that's the main thing. It's just, well, let me expand on that, because I don't let me see. So yeah, but for me, I've received like a lot of opportunities, so being in like the gospel industry, but a lot of the times I've felt God pressing me to turn a lot of it down, because even though like there's certain opportunities that can make you explode, but that's not really what God has placed in my heart to be after. Because I mean, before even being like a gospel artist, a writer, or anything, I'm an intercessor. That's like more than anything. That's what I am. I don't really see myself as like an artist. I really just see myself as like people they call me because they want me to intercede. So.
Okay, sounds good. I hope you had a nice time at today's interview.
You said that's it?
I said yes. I was asking if you had a nice time today.
Oh yes. No, I had a nice time. It was less nerve-wracking than I thought.
Okay. Do you have any words you want to share or things you want to really talk about more?
No, I think that's about it.
You sure?
But yeah, I think we covered a lot. A lot. I poured out a lot that was in my heart. So,
So what are your
good.
last thoughts? What would you say are keywords you want to leave with the audience about working with God and building intimacy with God?
Yes. So my last thing that I would like to share is that, just to continue to try and find that place. Try and find that place where you can encounter God. So whether it be, no matter where it is at, whether it be in the mountains or by the ocean, your room, just to continue to pursue that genuine place, away from all the noise, away from church activity. Find that place. That's my best thing I can suggest.
Yeah. So what do you also think about people being so engaged? There are people who are so more in the church activity than in actually serving God genuinely. Because there are some people who are more into the activity of wanting to get known. People seeing them that, oh, this is sister, this person, she's so active in it, but deep down it's coming from a place of self. How do you think one should be mindful of not being in such situation?
I think the best thing is I always go back to just separating and refocusing your mind on God. I actually just wrote a song like that.
Oh wow.
The chorus is "Don't let me come to worship," because a lot of the times, in the church, sometimes we get so distracted and we start to just go for the activities rather than for the very reason that we're there. So, in order to separate ourselves from that is just continuing to exalt God in our lives, and to not just make it about that place of just the place of the churchy stuff. To not just make it about that, but to allow God to enter into every area of your life.
Wow. So what role does consecration play in your ministry?
I think that plays a huge role for me, because there's a lot of places that that I've been invited to that I really haven't gone, and I feel like I stopped partying I never really even been a partier, so let me not but I stopped partying. I stopped going to these different type of engagements. I think that's one thing that it pushed me into, but also with just understanding the crowds, that you are being invited into, and not even necessarily church crowds, but church crowds, maybe even with different family members, understanding what you're being invited into and understanding the okay time to go into that place and to be able to, speak with those different people, and maybe a different family gathering, and then a time where you shouldn't be there. So that's more so that's the part where that consecration played in me, is just being able to separate myself from different types of activities and things of that such.
So how do you think young people in this world that is really so sexual, you see a lot of sexual content everywhere, how do you still keep your mind guarded as somebody who is a worshiper and someone who has to always go before God? So how do you keep your mind guarded from all these sexual activities and sexual content everywhere?
Yeah, that's why I don't go on Instagram too much, and that's the very reason why, is because there's so much that unwanted stuff that will pop up in front of your face where you're not even trying to look. But yeah, I think it's more so just being aware, and also especially with us, with controlling our thoughts and controlling our eyes, and recognizing when those thoughts slip in there, because just as very people, because when as this culture with them sexualizing a lot of things more, I think we do have to be more aware of what we're allowing into our mind, especially with TV shows that we're watching and things like that. But we have to be more mindful of the different TV shows that we watch and things of that sort. For me, I love, I don't know if you heard Power the TV show.
Yeah, it's
I love
addictive.
Power, but I can't watch it anymore because
oh really?
because it's a lot of the themes in there are just sexualized, and that's things shows like that. I like Power, but I can't watch it because things like that. I feel like we have to know our limits and what we can watch. Some people, they probably can watch it, but like for me, God personally, he told me like, you have to stop watching this because of that very reason.
Wow, so God actually told you that? Mm-hmm. Wow. It's really true. I think these are things that it kind of has a way of actually defiling your spirit. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily need to be engaged in sexual immorality for your spirit to be defiled. From the things you watch, from the things you take in, that's actually creates defilement. And it's really true. And for somebody who is a worshiper, you're in constant talks with God and as an intercessor, so it's very important that you guard the content that really comes into your spirit. And it's not just because you're a worshiper. For a Christian, that's how it should be. You should be able to sever some things that should. One of the things I struggled with was secular music. Like there's some secular music that's just so nice, and then you just want to listen. You're just in that. It's not bad. It's okay. It's neutral. But at a point in my time, I had to grow spiritually. I know that these things are not. I shouldn't be doing them as a Christian, and I had to let it go. It was painful. It wasn't an easy process. There were days that I would just be like, let me just binge listen to this music for a while. But after a lot of spiritual encounters and growth, I had to let those part of my life. So I don't really understand where you're coming from when you said you had to stop watching Power, because like even I used to watch it before, but it became too intense and I was like, nah, I don't think this is what I want for, because it now became like an idol. You're looking forward to when the next episode comes out. And it's really true. If we must serve God wholeheartedly, we should be ready to give up some things to actually be able to serve God properly. And if He has told you this is what I don't want from you, this is what I don't want from you. And what could be your consecration? God, this might be different for me. God might tell me that, there's this thing, particular thing that says an idol for you. I don't want it. And it's very true that it's very good to be in tune with God so that you are adequately hearing Him and you're able to sense when there are things that are not in alignment with work. So some people might say it's just a movie. For some people, it might be eating too much.
Yes.
God might be like, no, I think you are going into gluttony. I don't want you to eat as much. You eat too much. And when you eat too much, how can you hear? Because there's no place of fasting. You're just eating. So it's very important that you understand what your consecration is and walk in your consecration.
Yeah, we have to realize that it comes at a cost of something. Especially like fasting. Like for me, I mean, just on a personal, like for me, fasting is something that was like real hard for me. But that's the place where I feel most close to God. When when things aren't, when I haven't been able to consume anything, but I'm like really meditating on God. But yeah, fasting, because I didn't like losing weight. That's my number one thing. Especially because growing up, I played football, so. Like I would always be trying to put on weight, and then when I stopped playing, I still continue to go to the gym and build up. But yeah, that's the cost of my fast. But
I think you're okay. You don't really need to add weight, because like.
I'm okay with it now. Yeah. I'm okay with it now. But before, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It was nice having you, Jericho.
Yes.
I hope you had a nice time.
Yes, I did. It was a pleasure.
Yes. So please don't forget to subscribe, share with your friend. And also, we'll be having some other interesting guests coming on our next episode. Don't forget to watch out as soon as it's out. You will get notifications. And please click the notification button so that when it comes out, well, it was nice speaking with you, Jericho.
Yes,
and I hope you have a great week.
Yes.
Yeah.
God bless you.
You too.